in it. Thank you, Lord, I thank you for all these people who serve the public in one way or another at ECUA. Help us to all serve with honor and dignity and respect for our fellow man. In your name I pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We move now to adoption of the agenda. Thank you so much. Do you have a motion?
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Please vote. Everybody make sure your little green button is green.
It might be red if they're voting against it.
Or red if you're voting against it. Adoption of agenda passes 9-0. We move now to open forum. I don't see any pink slips and I don't see any people, so we will move on to approval of the minutes on page 5 of the January 21st CAC meeting.
I'll move to adopt the minutes.
Thank you. Have a second?
I second.
Who's that? Ms. Ritz?
Yes.
Thank you. Please vote. And now we have a presentation on delivery of cans. Mr. Rudd.
Yes, ma'am. As you all know, we brought can maintenance in-house as of January 2nd from our previous contractor, Auto Container Maintenance. They'd held that contract for 14 years. The board voted in last May not to renew that contract. Obviously, they were not real happy with that decision, and their quality of work declined steadily during the last several months of their contract. We discovered after we took over in January that a lot of work orders were marked as complete that really weren't marked completed. A lot of times the only way we found that was when the customer called either a board member or back into customer service. So we're making progress on getting that caught up. The complaints are definitely dropping. We're still only half staffed for the number of drivers that the board approved. The board approved 8, we have 4. Actually, we're down to 3 because one of the drivers that we were having numerous problems with is no longer with us. They were not completing work orders as they were trained, and so we made a change. Work orders are being generated by customer service and sent to sanitation. There's issues with the tablets that we use for completing the work order. Staff is in the process of getting more of those tablets now. That should help with the problems also. But we need to get the rest of the staffing filled and get them trained. And that's something we're working on right now. It's last month we had almost 6,000 work orders issued, and that was a lot for 3 people to handle, basically. So that was a source of a lot of the problems. Like I said, we think staff's got a handle on a lot of these issues, and it should be improving over the next several weeks.
Mr. Perkins.
I know a lot of organizations do cross-training when they have a situation where one area has difficulty that other people can come in and take over there. Are we thinking about, or have we done any?
Yes, that was part of the process, and that's what we're doing now, is using drivers to complete these can orders. Unfortunately, we have 16 openings for drivers as well. So not only are we short can people, we're short drivers.
You wanna continue?
Well, I can let Dr. Walker go first or continue, whichever he prefers.
Thank you. This was a topic that I requested to have put on the agenda because of calls that I'd gotten in the last couple of weeks, similar to calls that I'd gotten before, over the last few months especially. I got two particular calls, one on Saturday and one on a Monday. One of them had waited, according to the report, it had been 30 days since they submitted a request for a can, and the other was 50 days. And they had not gotten what they needed. One of them got a can, but it was the wrong size can, and it had been 50 days since they requested that it be removed and the correct size be brought. So these are things that are, obviously not good service, and I know I'm not telling Mr. Rudd anything when I say that. And we really need to do whatever we can do. Find 16 drivers, train more people to deliver these cans and so forth. But it's a problem, and it needs to be fixed. For one thing, it makes the customer service reps look foolish. I understand they are instructed, apparently they are instructed, apparently it's on the menu of responses that they're trained to give in response to questions or complaints. They're instructed to say that a can will be delivered within 10 days, 10 working days, is that?
Yes.
10 working days. And then the can doesn't get delivered after 15 days or 20 days, and the customer calls back to customer service, and all they are trained to say and apparently authorized to say is, it'll be there in 10 days. And that promise or that commitment made by the customer service person has no linkage to the reality of what may actually happen. Most of the time, I expect it does happen within 10 days, but sometimes it doesn't. As I say, one of these customers told me I had it marked on their calendar. First day of that call was December 17th, and it had been 50 days since that first call.
Yes, and we don't dispute that in that case, something fell through the cracks.
Right.
Something to keep in mind here, like I said, not only are we short personnel, but we have over 200,000 cans out in the field. If the board's goal is to have 0 complaints, I can tell you that's not gonna happen. The customer service reps are doing what they're told. If they get a complaint from a customer, as you just described, they're instructed to pass that up to a supervisor, and then it gets immediate attention. And the vast majority of time, it's taken care of immediately. If we weren't dealing with the majority of the can issues, you would be getting a whole lot more calls than you are. When we have 200,000 cans out between the two counties. So the fact that, yes, I understand you don't want to get any complaints, but 6 weeks into a new operation, when you're only half-staffed, and to get the small amount of complaints we have, I feel the staff is doing the best they can. Is it good enough? No. We are pushing them to do better, and we will continue to do that. But we are 6 weeks into a new operation that Otto did for 14 years. So it's gonna take a little bit of time. We don't even have our permanent trucks yet for delivery. We're using rental trucks. They're not set up to work with the wireless system. So there's all kinds of things that aren't really fully ready to go yet. So yes, there's gonna be some issues for probably 2 more weeks, and then hopefully we can have everything resolved.
Thank
I appreciate that comment, and I want you to know that if there's something more that sanitation needs from the board, through this committee, of course, if we need more positions, if you need more money or whatever,
Well, we just need to fill the positions that were approved.
okay, well,
It's a very tough labor market. The driver shortage is not getting any better. And it's very difficult to find people that want to do this kind of work.
Madam Chairman, allow me to say that I know it's not all negative about sanitation performance or even garbage cans. I drove about 125 miles in my district on last Tuesday, and I saw, in that entire 125 miles, I saw one can with a single broken hinge. And every other can I look at, and it's just a unconscious habit now. I look at every can I pass. Even when I'm in town, in the city, I look at the city cans. I can't help it. Anyway, it was only a single can with a single broken hinge, and otherwise, everything looked
You're
great.
not going the same way over and over again.
No, there's a grand circuit that can be made in District 5, and it's about 125 miles if you do it all. I'd like to tell one story too. One time years ago, I got a call. This sort of illustrates some of the difficulties in can delivery. I got a call from a man I knew up in District 5 one time, and he said, "There's a man in my yard who says he works for you guys, for ECUA. I've got my shotgun aimed at him right now. Can you verify that he does work for you? If not, he's going to be in trouble." And I said, a couple of questions, and yes, sir, he works for ECUA. Please don't shoot him. And he let him go. Thank you, Mr. Rudd, for giving us an explanation.
Mr. Engel.
Just tagging on to what Larry Walker said, is there a way to let customer service give a more realistic answer? Because a lot of times I think customers probably get a little more ticked off if they get an unrealistic answer than if they get an answer they may not like. So that might be something that could be looked into, number one. Number two is, are you getting like plenty of applications? They're unqualified. If it's a tight labor market, do we have to up the salary a little bit, or what is? Can you put your finger on the problem?
Yeah, we've done that. We've increased salary. A lot of the people that we get for interviews don't meet the minimum qualifications, have no experience, or when they hear about the job, they just simply don't want to take it.
Any ideas on how to beef up the applicants? Do you think increasing salary would really realistically do anything?
I think our salary is very competitive, but this is a national problem. We are not the only ones having this problem. People are not going into driving trucks anymore. We have the same issue with mechanics. We cannot find qualified mechanics to work on the equipment, and that causes its own set of problems. But both are national issues. We're not the only people having that problem.
Is that it? Ms. Schumann?
A few questions piggybacking even on what you were just asking. What is the starting salary?
$14.86 an hour, I believe. And then on top of that, they get $1 per hour for attendance incentive if they just come to work all week without calling in sick. And they also get a annual safety bonus if they don't have any accidents. And after a year, that goes up to at least 17 something an hour.
Okay. And where all do we publish or advertise where,
HR is responsible for that. I couldn't tell you.
okay. And you said we're down 16 drivers? How long have we been down?
The oldest vacancy goes back to September that we've been trying to fill.
And last question on this.
Yes, ma'am.
Has the two that've been waiting 30 and 50 days, have we gotten them cans yet?
Yes, we took care of that as soon as we became aware of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ritz?
Thank you. Some of my questions have been addressed already, but my other thought that while I was listening, Are there any possibilities of a job fair at either George Stone or Pensacola State College when they have them?
Yes, they've done that multiple times.
Is it successful or is it no?
Usually we get very few.
Okay. I hate to bring this up, but are they screened for criminal backgrounds?
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm assuming that can be a problem with their
In some cases, but recently we've begun looking at that on a case-by-case basis and even hiring people that in the past we wouldn't.
have.
Yep.
Are those situations working out for you, Rand?
It varies.
It
Depends on
varies.
the employee, yep.
What about, and then the other one, I'm sure you are well-versed and I'm just a learner. What about veterans?
Yes, we've approached the VA, I believe, and had job fairs there as well.
And is it successful or is it a waste of your time?
We have hired some prior military people because they have truck training in the military and they tend to be very good employees.
Tank drivers.
But there again, a lot of times, if they had the option of being a delivery driver for FedEx or UPS versus being a garbage truck driver, they're gonna go be a delivery driver, so.
I don't know if I've told you this before, but I had a delivery from Lowe's. And of course, I asked the gentleman that was mule hauling all the tiles back to the lot if he had thought of applying for a driver. And he said he had, but the pay was too low compared to what he was getting to begin with at Lowe's. So I didn't know what the salary differentiation
I couldn't tell you,
is.
you know, but like I said, we've had HR look at that, they've done studies and, you know, I think when you compare our salary to other garbage operations, I think we're very competitive.
Thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
And you know, we get insurance, you know, which is a pretty big deal, and paid holidays and retirement and all that. So I mean, if you take one of these jobs and stick with it, it can be a pretty good job. And I mean, you know, we're not canning people very often. If they're doing the job, they're going to keep the job, you know, for as long as they want, or until they move into another position or anything. But I think that that the driver shortage, you know, for us has become chronic. I mean, it's been 2 or 3 years, and so I think continuing to do what we're doing is not an option anymore. I think we need to look at different techniques for dealing with recruitment or retention, and one of the things I know that I thought might work is, you know, we pay this PR firm good money to do these PR things about the water, about recycling and all this. It might be worth asking them, can you do some things, recruiting, come to work for ECUA, a good job, benefits, ECUA needs drivers. But, you know, put that out there on some of these TV commercials or in the newspapers. ECUA is hiring drivers. I mean, I've never seen an ad like that anywhere, a big, pretty ad. ECUA, come to work for ECUA, a good government job, you know. I think there's a lot more blue-collar people out there that would apply for those jobs if they knew. You know, most people, they don't go to a government website and apply for a job because usually the people who get them jobs know somebody. And so most of the people know that, I'm not going to apply for one of them government jobs because there's somebody else going to get it, you know, the average people. So I think an active recruitment campaign, and then, you know, I'm sure Colin Bassinger probably doesn't go out and look for garbage drivers, but there's got to be some PR firm or some professional firm that recruits for that type of position. I think we ought to explore that. Just continuing to handle it in-house, I just don't think is working. And we can't run a garbage service without drivers. I mean, it's a critical element. We've got to address that problem. Having 16 driver shortage, I can't imagine the pressure that puts on that department and the rest of the drivers. I mean, it's got to be a pretty tough working environment, and it might be a self-fulfilling prophecy that because we're so short-staffed, we're overworked, and they don't want to stick around. So I think we might need to gear up and look at some other options. And I doubt that this is something we can do, but I know that a lot of these folks that are in this line of work use tobacco, whether it's smokeless tobacco or cigarettes. I don't know if our insurance company will give us, we're a totally tobacco-free organization. I don't know if for these positions, there's a chance that we could have a waiver on that, or we could get a cost estimate on what that waiver would be, but if it wouldn't be too expensive, it might be worth looking at that, because I think that, I know of people that have applied for positions, good professional positions, that were smokers, gotten hired, and been honest with them, hey, no, I use tobacco, and then ended up not being able to take the position, choosing not to take the position rather than to stop using tobacco. So I don't know if that's an option or not, but I think the moral of the story I'm trying to make is that we can't continue to do what we've been doing, expecting to meet the goals that we're trying to meet.
Dr. Alexander?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, would it, I always feel like I'm behind the 8 ball by still being kind of new to a lot of these subjects, if you will. But from listening, as it relates to this, I mean, this can be certainly a real crisis if you don't have people that do the basic fundamental mission of ECUA, and that is to pick up refuge, if you will, right? And so that's problematic. But I'm going to tell you what I'm really sitting here struggling with is, and I agree with my colleague, Mr. Perkins, I think we're at a place of, we're going to get at a place we're going to be at critical mass because we're going to be able to meet one of our basic primary functions. What I would like to recommend, if the board thinks it's appropriate, because this is something that doesn't settle very, well, let me say I'm not clear about it. I would encourage HR leadership, along with the leadership of sanitation, come up with some ideas as to maybe how they can recruit, and maybe, because as I heard you say, sir, when it comes to the recruitment effort, that's have been HR's responsibility. I think it's a joint responsibility, because I think we've done a great job for the last 20 minutes defining what the problem is, but we have not in any kind of way, I think, initiated, what's the approaches, what we're going to be able to do at this. I would recommend, even before we go outside and spend money, is that we give these two entities, HR and sanitation, maybe opportunities for their shops, including not just the senior leadership, but also the men and women who work on the ground, if you will, throughout HR, and those men and women who pick up the trash. All of them have some input and maybe in some ways in which we can come up to begin to start a whole new recruitment drive before we get to that next place. And maybe in whatever you feel is appropriate, Madam Chair, so within some period of time, come back to this board and maybe share what some of those recommendations are that you guys have come up, that they have come up with, to present to us and begin to kind of work for from there. I know there's a challenge in virtually every field of endeavor right now trying to hire people. We see it in government, we see it in private industry, we see it everywhere. But I think we, as I have asked other organizations to do, we really have to challenge ourselves to go outside of what we normally do. And for some of us, that's somewhat hard to do, because if you think about what we've just gone through with an executive director, we had to back up 5 yards and punt and then come back. So there's a lot of competition out there. We also have a new generation of young people who have interests in other places. And but I agree with my colleague too. What are some creative kinds of ways that just doesn't describe a person as someone that picks up trash, but understand environmentally the importance of it? I think even if we change our language, it may have an impact. You're not just a person who picks up trash, if you will, because they probably have one of the more important jobs in keeping our community safe from disease, as school teachers do. None of us would be up here without a school teacher. But those are the kind of jobs, I think, that doesn't get the kind of attention that they should. But that's a different subject, but I think it comes to this, maybe we can change some of the language, even in our advertisements, around this, because you're really environmentally expert, if you will. You can call it whatever you wanna, but at the end of the day, I think that perception of how we defined ourselves and how we see ourselves in that role. And I just offer that as a suggestion, but that's what I want to hear from HR and from sanitation, to maybe come and present some ideas that they have, and then we can provide the support to them. And if we just can't get there, then we go outside and look at maybe someone professionally help us. But I will not accept the notion or the insinuation that there's nothing that can be done, because I don't think we've explored those opportunities at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Kimball?
So I understood that this position is, you said there's like cross-utilization with the drivers, but so with this, the 8 people for this particular job, does that require a CDL license as well?
Yes.
So what, I'm just curious, what are they driving that, I mean, are they driving like some big truck?
It's like a 26-foot box truck.
Okay, okay.
Now, and we did, lower that to hire people that didn't have a CDL, and we would train them to get their CDL, and we're still having issues.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think there is a lot to be said. Some of it's been said as far as just, I was talking with a friend of mine who happens to be an employee who was being courted by another organization, and it's just, I had to recast the vision of the fact that working for ECUA is a really great job, and so, because you have to look at everything. So it's always about recasting that vision of the benefits and the retirement, things like that a lot of these other organizations don't have. So I think we and I get to do this all the time with hiring people, and it is a problem across all industries, across the country, but we have to be storytellers. So finding some of those senior employees that work in your department that love what they do or have been here a long time, and they can talk about, or maybe even some people that have retired that can talk about, the great life that they get to live now because of working for ECUA for 20 years or whatever the case may be. So to kind of have some people understand that, yeah, it might be a little bit of a challenge up front, just no different than teachers, as you mentioned. I mean, the starting salary for a teacher these days is not great, but if they stick with it long enough, it's a great career at the end of the day after 30 years. So I think there's something to be said for that, and no different than looking for a new executive director. If we had to contract with a group to go out and fill some of these positions, I think that might be worth looking at, because I think part of it is there's a bunch of people out there that just don't even know that the jobs are available. So okay, that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Benson?
Randy, I think about you all the time, and I think, what if I got up and had to go to work and do the job you do every day, with the challenges you face and the complaints you listen to, and somehow you're always on the cutting edge of the important things. And so, first of all, thank you. And we're trying to second guess what you've obviously already thought of, and I understand that the pool of workers who are applying for these jobs, the hourly salary is a whole lot more important than a retirement down the road. That's just not a motivator. And as we barrel toward the legalization of marijuana, it is going to get exponentially worse, because just because it's legal doesn't mean these people can drive. And so I don't know how you do it. So I'm going to throw out a dumb idea that probably can't be done, but we have people coming out of prison who are handed $25 and a one-way ticket, and they have no family support system, they have no jobs, they don't even have a checking account, and they're told they've got to see their parole officer, whom they have to pay with what, I don't know. And there's a revolving door, and we know that. But there's a group in town that takes a certain number of them and helps them find jobs. And I think this group does amazing work, and they have a pretty good record of it. Can we even look at ex-convicts?
Certainly, yeah.
Because I think that is a pool of workers, and there are risks, obviously, and I'm making your job harder. But boy, if there was some way to get some of these people into good work, to stop the recidivism and all of that, and to gain a loyal employee, I'd sure like to do it.
Believe me, we are open to any suggestions. Not having the staff to get the job done is very frustrating, so we're open to any and all suggestions to fill these. I mean, I know the prison system has a CDL training program, so that would play into this. Mr. Perkins, correct, the tobacco policy eliminates a lot of people right up from the beginning. They're truck drivers, they use tobacco. So that eliminates a lot of potential candidates right off the bat. So, but yeah, we're willing to look at any and everything to, fill these positions. It makes everyone's life easier when we're fully staffed. I can't remember the last time sanitation was fully staffed. It's been years. And, so, whatever we can do to help, we're willing to do so.
And if this is feasible, could we go to Century and say, if you do these things, there could be a good job for you. And, it's probably not a pool that a lot of people are going to.
Right. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's,
I've got connections up there too.
I know you do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get with HR and we'll definitely look into it.
Okay, good. Thank you for this, and we do appreciate the challenges you face.
Thank you. Ms. Schumer.
Is there anyone, staff attending that is on HR that can speak to some of this?
I was looking around, I don't see, is Kim out today?
I'm not sure, she may be in training.
Okay.
Our HR director's in training right now. I will say that our HR department is probably as frustrated as Randy is with the process and how things are going. I think it's a great idea to maybe do a brainstorm session and throw some stuff up on a wall and just get as many ideas out as we can. Certainly, our backlog of filling positions is growing. It's not getting smaller. At least it hadn't in the last few weeks, as far as I can tell. We have transferred this role in-house in terms of can delivery, and we're still cleaning up behind our contractor with that. But if we're going to manage it properly going forward, we got to have the people. All of these ideas that have been suggested, I think, are worth thinking about. From a big picture standpoint, sanitation is, marginal in terms of finances, so that might have an impact, on the budget. So, but it is by far, I think, the largest service we provide. Over 2 counties. It's the one it's been a revelation to me that we touch these people every week, and so there's that many more opportunities for conflicts or problems, and it requires that much more of an effort to try to minimize those kinds of things, and we can't do it if we don't have people. So I think it's a great idea. I think we can probably come back in a month and maybe talk about it some more.
Thank you.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the position the sanitation equipment operator, just to make sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe we could change that to sanitation engineer.
There you go.
Then we get a whole different kind of.
That's illegal.
Mr. Alexander.
Yeah, so I don't know what it's gonna take, Madam Chair, but I would, I guess it would have to come from someone up here, that HR and and sanitation come back to us in a month or whatever period of time, and give us an idea of some new ideas. You know, we're in a place where of criminal justice reform. We're going to see a lot of people come out of jail, and a lot of people, quite frankly, coming from a very conservative lawman like myself, and very conservative when it comes to that. There are a lot of people in there who are not violent offenders. The people who are in there on marijuana charges, and back when we were just arresting folks and throwing away the key, not violent whatsoever. And there are people out there who are looking for opportunities for work, and because they want to be productive, they don't want to, you know, they want to do something different in their lives. But we all of us still have a certain bias, I think, when we hear ex-con, you know, how can they ever be a good citizen again? Well, that's our stuff oftentimes, right? And I think when it comes to non-violent offenders, we have an opportunity to at least share with them what it is that we have here and what opportunities it is for them to do something very different in their lives and from their families. But it's that type of creative thought, I think, that we have to be able to exercise. You know, there was a time, and I spent over 40 years in policing, you couldn't even have a tattoo. You could not even have smoked marijuana in your life. And if we still had that rule on the book, we wouldn't hire nobody. Right, you know, so, but that's the reality, right? And that doesn't mean we're lowering any standards. It just means in some ways we're adjusting ourselves to a very new society in which, whether we like it or not, is changing in front of us. So I appreciate, what I really appreciate about you, sir, your ability to stand here and support and defend your folks that you have doing the incredible job that they do with the minimal amount of help that they have. But my bigger concern is that at some point we're going to burn those folks out with overtime, because it gets to a point overtime just doesn't do it anymore. And people need time off to be with their families or do whatever. So I think we're at a place where we don't want to be in a crisis, but we're certainly heading in that direction. So it would be great to hear back from you all in terms of some ideas that you all have, and I think you've heard some great ideas from the board, but I truly believe the impetus of those ideas really have to come from HR and come from sanitation, and ask the men and women who are out there doing the work on the ground every day what their ideas are, and you'll be surprised. Many of them have ideas that we haven't even thought about yet. So I'll stop right there.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Walker?
Thank you. First, a question to everybody in the room. Does the prison at Century, the state prison at Century, have in-house job training programs?
They're minimal. I mean, they're not, you know, they have GED programs, they don't really have job training programs.
All right.
Yeah. And another thing is that there are the perfect offenders, and I love the idea because it not only solves our problems, but it solves some societal problems. Most of these people, when they get out, the reason the recidivism is so high is nobody will hire a con. You know, and so they can't get a job, they can't take care of their family, and so they end up having to do stuff that gets them reincarcerated. And the other big thing is addiction, you know, has been treated, rather than an illness, has been treated as a crime for centuries here. And when people are sent to prison for 15 years on a marijuana charge, if they get clean of the drugs and stuff, a lot of them have no other crimes in their past, you know. And so those type of people, you know, get clean, there'd be an opportunity. Now the truth is that most of the people in our prison system have long sentences. I mean, there are a lot of people who are there for a very long time, but they have quite a few who are getting to the end of those sentences, nonviolent offenders, and who could I think the prison system has a problem much bigger than our problem, way bigger than our problem. I think anything they could do to help alleviate some of that recidivism and help them with their critical mass that they're facing would be welcomed by them. And I know people we could talk to about that, but I think, you know, just as one element of our approach, a pilot project looking at that would be a really, with careful evaluation and measuring the results and careful study. I mean, I think that could be something much bigger than ECUA, you know, as far as helping our community. So,
Madam Chairman, excuse me, I'd like to raise the suggestion to Mr. Rudd and to HR and all of us that we consider trying to establish an in-house commercial driver training program up at the Century Prison, sponsored by us, and using garbage trucks instead of big
there's no way.
moving van trucks.
There's no way. There's no way. They'd worry about them driving it through the fence. I mean, that would never happen. We would never do it. But I think the idea of meeting with them and asking how we can help and how we might do this would be good. I've got some contacts if you need some names. But I love the idea of establishing a contract. But they're never going to have a garbage truck or any big truck inside that prison. I guarantee you.
Well, I leave it with Mr. Perkins to do what he can on that idea.
Thank you, Ms. Schumo.
Madam Chair, what about the idea of partnering with the school system of training up-and-coming graduates who they're not on the college track, and it's hard to know what you want to do when you grow up, but putting this information out there and offering some type of apprenticeship.
Thank you very much. Do you want me to do my comments before you go, or you want to go?
Mine's real quick.
Okay.
I'm just going to say that we're going to take all the discussion here today and get the staff together, and we're going to come back and at least give some organization to this thought process that we're going through, and recommend what we think might be the most effective ideas that are presented here that we can follow up on. And we can talk about it some more as a committee in terms of, with the committee in terms of, you know, what we think will work, and have some more discussion at that point in time, and go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
If a committee member has an idea and they may know some people who would be a good contact, who should they send that to in staff, that they can, so y'all can throw it up on the board and say, hey, the school system, so-and-so's a contact. Who should, you know, citizen advisory members or anybody, should we email that to so that it can get to the right place?
You're welcome to send it to me or to Randy or to Kim Scruggs, our HR person. We're all in this, and we'll share the information. Be glad to.
Thank you. Just a few things that I wanted to say. You may even want to talk with Florida West. I think we give them $40,000 a year to get jobs. Maybe they have some ideas of how to help with that as well. Also, if you want to see a program that works like this, besides Pathways for Change, go to Four Seasons Restaurant on Palafox Street. They hire people coming out of the prison system and they have to stay clean, and they have to go to their, you know, the person they check in with and parole officer and what have you, but they cook the meanest hamburger you've ever had in your life. And I go there at least once a week. I'd like to go there 3 times a week, but I'm not downtown all the time, so it works. And they build a lot of really good chefs coming out of that kitchen downtown. They do a lot of catering and what have you. So I think this is a great talk. I do agree that maybe changing the name, just, you know, so that it sounds good, and having those people that are doing our commercials get out there and talk about what a great opportunity this is for young people. I agree with Ms. Schumo that maybe go to the high schools, because there's a lot of people that don't know what they want to do, and this would be a nice interim job for them. So I think you have some great ideas. I think maybe Kim and HR and Mr. Keith Kiles, and like Dr. Alexander said, get some of the drivers in there, let them give some input. throw everything up on the wall and see what works and bring it back to us, and we're here to support you. I agree wholeheartedly with Ms. Benson that we appreciate, Randy, you getting out here and telling us what the problems are and how we need to fix them. I know 2 years ago, Randy and I decided I wasn't gonna vote on a rate hike unless it included those incentives for the drivers, and that's helped a little bit, but, you know, maybe raise those up a little bit, or maybe, I mean, in my business, we offer sign-in bonuses, you know, for people. They gotta stay a certain amount of time, but, you know, get a sign-in bonus in place for them, so I think you'll come up with some good ideas for us, and we appreciate you so much coming up here and giving us all this information.
And we could tell those people up there at Century and other correctional facilities, we'll start recruiting their officers if they don't work with us. No, okay.
I did want to ask one question of Mr. Of John back there. John, when we get this new system all in place, this queue is going to be better for the can delivery, right? So if somebody calls into the system, it'll go in a queue, and we'll be able to follow that all the way through. So I don't know if everybody understands that our new computer system, right now they're working with work orders, and work orders get lost in the mix somehow, some way. You know, I was so amazed that we were still working with work orders when I came here. But this queue is going to be unbelievable for them, but it's kind of old school. I've been working with a queue for 10 years, but go in the queue, and you can look at this screen right here and tell when that came in and where it is today. And they'll be able to look and say, well, that should have been done 2 days ago. These are critical now, critical. And so you'll be able to follow it all along. I think that is going to help tremendously. So thank you very much. Get away from item F and throw something in here. I see in the audience Mr. Bryce Pelfrey. Bryce, if you just wave. Bryce is here today because I'm going to ask for him to be appointed to the CAC to replace Ms. Ben. He lives in District 1, right in the middle of District 1. And so I just wanted him to come and see what goes on here, and maybe we'll see him next week, and maybe we won't, but try not to scare him off today is all I'm saying. Thank you for coming, Bryce. We appreciate it. We move now to item G, which is a 2019 water service renewals change order on page 10. Bill, do you want to explain this one briefly?
Certainly. We renew water services. We usually have a contract every year, probably for the last 20 years or more. Water services are the tubing that runs from the main to the meter. When they fail, a lot of times they fail under roadways, under pavement, causes potholes and that sort of thing. It's a major maintenance problem for our regional services staff. So we replace a number every year. After this year's contract was put out to bid, we identified the areas that we wanted to work on. We became aware of a neighborhood, an area where they are ready to resurface their roads, and it made sense, if we could, to get the water services replaced before that resurfacing was done. So we were looking at using the unit prices from the competitive bids that we got for this year's contract, and do that under a change order to that contract to take care of this neighborhood. It's Town Square condominiums area, kind of near Cordova Mall, that area. So this is the competitive prices and an opportunity to kind of get in front of this resurfacing work.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Benson? Thank you. Got a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? Mr. Inkle?
Could I just get a quick idea? Versus the old water line says we've been doing it since '79. is there a plan in place about how far along are we in replacing all the water service lines? And are the newer ones vinyl or whatever they are, is their life expectancy significantly greater than the old lines?
Reasonable question. 79 is before ECUA's time. I know that probably since the early 90s we've been replacing. We began because we were having problem with, and these lines are tubing. They're HDPE type of tubing, high density polyethylene tubing. At the time we were using polybutylene, and polybutylene turned out to just be a bad product. So we were replacing a lot of those. The HDPE, it lasts reasonably well, but we will be replacing water services from now and forever with the number of services we got and the number we replace every year. By the time we get through the system, we'll be aging those other water service lines as well.
Yeah, my apologies for confusing that. The town square was built around 79 and the replacement started in the 90s. But it's gonna be an ongoing constant thing, right?
Yes,
Basically.
yes. Town Square and that water system was built when the city still owned the system, yes.
And it had that polybutylene tubing, which is why you would think that, well, built in 79, they should still be lasting. But actually, some of the newer neighborhoods have had more problems than some of the older neighborhoods because that era of the connection tubing the polybutylene was defective.
Thank you, Dr. Walker.
I would point out that, Madam Chairman, I would point out that there was a lawsuit, nationwide lawsuit against the producer of the polybutylene pipe tubing, and we joined that suit and received several million dollars. I think it was like $5 million, which we used to replace the polybutylene pipe. This is my point out to, as I understand it, this was just to replace the lines that went under a road from the side where the main was to the houses on the other side, so that by replacing those lines, we could avoid eruptions in the street that caused potholes and so forth. And so this was how we got the money to start with, a large amount of it, and how we use it. But it is a fact, as Mr. Johnson said, that we'll be doing this from now to eternity, because pipe, there's always pipe. Every day there's pipe in the ground getting older. No matter how new it is, it's already getting older.
Yes,
We've done it. It's happened twice. It's happened twice in our Wood Run neighborhood, Joe.
thank you. Yeah, but think of all the pipes you will have seen. Thank you for the great questions. It's every time we found a wood pipe still in working order underneath the city of Pensacola when we started doing inflow and infiltration, which I thought was just amazing. But okay, I think we have a motion and a second. Do we any more comments? If not, please vote. And while you're voting, Dale reminded me that we didn't say the vote on approval of the minutes, and we got in that long discussion about delivery of cans, and I forgot to say that it did pass 9-0. So. Is your little green button or red if you're voting red? There it is, and it passes 9-0. We move now to item H, award of contract for the Humphreys Well GAC vessel coating replacement. I believe this. No, we hadn't got there yet. Okay. Yeah, so we're on item H, which is award of contract Humphreys Well GAC vessel coating replacement.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll second.
Thank you. We you have any questions, comments? If not, please vote. For the audience, this is the same price. We always like to get the same price, and no price increase on a new bid. And it passes 9-0. We move now to item I, which is disposition of surplus property, 0.31 acres and 0.50 acre parcels adjacent to the Gilmard Emergency Storage Tank on page 16. While you get there, Ms. Benson, if you want to.
Well, I moved the recommendation, but I also wanted to ask a couple questions.
Okay, Ms. Benson, I want to, before we get started on it, Mr. Kimball, you seconding?
I'll second, yeah.
Okay, okay, we got it first, second. One thing that I noticed and I brought to staff was that, there's a error in this item that says, let me get it, on page 17, under supporting data, it says that Real Business Consultants 2 Corporation owns the adjoining property. That is incorrect. It may be a entity that the same people own, but the adjacent property is in the name of Real Business Consultants, Inc. And I did not find Real Business Consultants 2 Corporation as a licensed Florida corporation, just noting. Ms. Benson.
Well, and that was kind of related to my question. I think Mr. Singh is the one who purchased that original property from us, and I was assuming that he is part of this entity, so that whatever's going to happen is going to be related to the original
Yeah.
project. And I can't remember the dollar amount of the bid that we rejected before. You
I do.
do?
Yeah, it's $2,000.
2,000.
So I don't.
Okay, good job. I think Mr. Perkins is the one who said we need to rebid that. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Ms.
that's just what I was
Perkins.
gonna say. I think it's good that the board, you know, when you get a low bid like that, and even though it's the bid and you realize that's not at market value, you do have a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens to say no to the people, even though it might hurt some feelings, and say, no, this is not an acceptable price for this, and rebid it. And, you know, I don't care who buys it, you know, if the price is right, you know, I mean, maybe not that, you know, Texas guy with the big hat that wanted to buy the downtown Main Street property, but yeah, I think this is good. It's good for our ratepayers, and it's a good job rebidding it, and I'm glad the staff got I don't know where they advertised or how they did it, but it's a much better price for the property.
Thank you. I totally agree, and I don't think, I wasn't saying anything negative about the corporation. I was just trying to fix our record. I am sure, Ms. Benson, he's probably buying this in a second LLC name so that because he might be doing something unrelated on both properties and may want to turn around and sell that one. So his lawyer is probably drawing up that LLC as we speak, and I can attest that our lawyers are not real fast. So I can say that because I work with 27 of them. Ms. Benson.
Yeah, and that property that he bought, the original building, has some historic architectural merit. It's a classic 50s building, and if this helps in his restoration for that, we've done something good for the fabric of the community as well. So this was something that was a problem, has now evolved to something that has benefits on several fronts. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you, Mr. Perkins.
That's a design person that's called mid-century or mid-century modern. But I don't know if we need to. Is the recommendation okay the way it reads with the?
No, I think we
corporation name,
we
or
just
do we
need to
need to-
change the name. So do you want to put put that in as an
That's
amendment,
for
Ms.
Mr.
Benson,
Johnson,
to
or
change the name to,
Ms. Johnson's got a slide.
oh,
I believe the recommendation is correct.
Yeah,
It was
it's
that the
supporting data.
supporting data
Yeah.
just incorrectly identified the adjacent property.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're just going to change that to Real Business, Inc. on the consulting as the owner of the adjacent property. just so the records are correct. And good job on getting that extra $23,000 to staff for our ratepayers. Thank you. Please vote. Maybe they'll build something really nice that you can rent out, Bryce. That's what Bryce works with Beck Property, so he rents it out once they get these buildings built. We move now to item J on page 19. This is granulated activated carbon and a rejection of all the bids. Bill, do you want to tell us a little bit about this? And why we-
Granulated activated carbon is the media we use in our GAC filters at several of our wells. This is just for the media, purchase of the media. Pretty normal bid. We just got 2 bids. They were both basically didn't meet the bid requirements. One was an inadvertent mistake. The other changed some things on us. We just need to rebid it, so we're requesting a rejection of the bids and allow us to rebid in the future.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a motion? Mr. Engel?
Just a real quick question. Is getting only 2 bids on something like this pretty normal? Is that a pretty small market or whatever, or very specialized competition?
Good question, Mr. Johnson.
I believe it is. You know, sometimes it depends on the type of media or the requirements of the media, the specifications related to it. I'd have to look back and see if our previous bids over the years have been any different, but I really don't think they are. I think typically 1 or 2 bids. Sometimes we only have a sole bidder.
Mr. Perkins, did you go down? Ms. Ritz?
Is there a
Messing with me
critical
over
level
there.
that could possibly occur if we didn't have an adequate supply?
Mr. Johnson?
Would you repeat?
Is there a critical level of inventory that needs to be maintained in order to not have a shortage?
Well, as I understand it, our current contract, which is with Calgon, I believe, they have agreed to continue supplying us as needed until it's rebid. So we're not looking at running out.
Great question, though. Thank you.
And I was just gonna say, a lot of the stuff that we do or the chemicals we buy stuff, some of it's very specialized. And so, you know, it's not like you can go to Home Depot and get a, you know, carbon filter, Calgon, big multi, you know, filter material. So a lot of times we will have only 2 or 3 bidders. It's not because we're excluding other people, it's just because we put it out there for everybody and that's just all we get, is a couple.
Yeah. Mr. Campbell?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you. Please vote. Please vote. And it passes 9-0. And sometimes we'll see bids, you'll see some big fluctuation in bid, and that's just because the one company is so busy, they might not want the job, so they're just bidding so high to make sure they don't get it. Or that's what we think anyway. We move now to the informational reports on pages 21 through 38. Do we have any questions or comments on the informational reports? If not, we move to unfinished business. Item L, any unfinished business? If not, item M, new business. Any new business? Ms. Benson?
Yeah, just something to share. In either this morning or yesterday morning, I can't remember, in the Washington Post, there was an article about, I think, the state of Washington, which is suddenly going to regulate bottled waters companies from drawing from the aquifers. 100 years ago, when I was on the Northwest Florida Water Management District, we were getting all these applicants who were for-profit businesses drawing from the aquifers to produce bottled water. Now, we have a pretty abundant aquifer, but South Florida does not. And I thought, and why are we allowing this? And there was really very little scrutiny on these. And now states are saying, wait a minute, this is a public resource. Why are we allowing these bottling companies to do this? Many of these bottled water companies, by the way, purchase municipal water. They purchase drinking water from places like ECUA, put it in bottles and sell it as bottled water. And all these people think that, you know, this is so much better than their tap water, when indeed it's the same product. But anyway, it will be an interesting issue to follow as more and more states go about regulating this, because it's pretty clear that the bottling creates some pollutants, just the making of the plastics, which do not decompose, and all of these things. And it's nice to see that states are beginning to regulate this. Anyway, sorry, that qualifies as soapbox.
No, I
And
liked it.
actually, I've seen studies that looked at bottled water, and bottled water is far less regulated than municipal tap water. So 80% of the bottled water is not as clean as the water that comes from the faucet, but people will pay, they'll be scared of their tap water, and they'll go pay, 100 times what the tap water costs for a lower quality water because it's in a bottle.
And it's named Smart Water.
Right.
So, but they stack it, and this always cracks me up, is when I see it stacked up and outside of these convenience stores in the heat.
Right.
And so you know that it's made out of a petroleum product, and it's sitting in the heat, baking, and it's gotta, carcinogens have gotta be going into the water. Wouldn't you think there, Dr. Walker?
I'm not an expert. But I certainly agree with anything like that. And there are many things that are being outlawed or done here and there, such as the one Mrs. Benson mentioned. Some places are outlawing styrofoam. Some places are outlawing plastic straws. By the way, I know someone who's now selling straws of bamboo. And you're encouraged to carry your bamboo straw around with you from restaurant to restaurant and not ask for a plastic or paper straw, either one. A lot of things happening for the good, a lot of things not happening. And I don't know, ECUA is still not really starting to think about sea level rise and how that might affect our neighborhood, our community.
Thank you. Ms. Benson?
Well, the other thing, while we're on the subject, it's always good to remind people that if they have a filtration system, to change their filters regularly, because it's much more dangerous to drink filtered water when it has not been changed than it is to drink your tap water, which isn't dangerous at all, by the way.
I have a couple of things on new business. One, we have an environmental steward award in the FOG program that rewards people for doing the right thing with their FOG program. We have another program for Recycle Ranger that, tells people they're doing a great job with recycle. But I would like to see us think about, and this committee can think about it, because you're the citizens, you're out there, and we're out there every day seeing people. I harp at the place I play golf, because they had styrofoam boxes, and they had plastic straws and styrofoam cups, and they had a pipe that was going out on the golf course, and there was always trash coming off of Barrancas Road in this pond. And so the guys were out there spending hours and hours picking up this trash. Well, somebody, I don't remember, it might have been Bill or Don, sent me a picture of a pipe with a net on the end of it. And I took it to them, and they're having the pipe measured, and they're going to put a net on the end of it so that they just have to walk out and empty it ever so often. And so for somebody to take all those suggestions that you give them, they now have recyclable straws, recyclable styrofoam. It's kind of like a lighter thing, and it says that it's recyclable. And I talked to staff, and they said yes, that it probably was. They went to paper boxes, and they've done so many things. So I'd love to be able to shine on them, you know, to say these people are doing such a great job. So I'd like to think about us maybe doing an environmental award for anybody that we see out there doing the right thing. Maybe once a quarter, even once a month, you know. I think if we celebrate the good, then you get more good. So that was one thing. The next thing was we have a lobbyist, but I don't get a lot of legislative updates. And I happened to be going to Tallahassee last week, you know, to talk to legislators about a few things. And so I asked staff to meet with me, and thank you, Don Palmer and Bill and Tim Haig and Stacy. A lot of them met with me last week to give me an update on where we were with some legislative things. And one thing that they told me about was how the bill, is it 2020 on reclaimed water? 1656. Yeah, 1656 is the Senate bill. And so when I got over there, our senator did not know about the bill. Somehow it moved around him, and he was very thankful that I brought it to his attention, and he actually had me come to the side of the Senate door and talk to the maker of the bill, who told me that we need not worry, that he knew we are different from South Florida. But basically, I'm gonna let Bill tell you just a little bit about the bill, if he will. And we need to keep our eye on this bill because it could be detrimental to us. It could be detrimental to the whole state of Florida, $28 billion it could cost the state. But, you know, we're different than South Florida, and a lot of times these bills come up because of things going on down there, and this was going on up. This was gonna affect us greatly.
This bill, I believe, had some genesis in some of the problems in South Florida with drinking water, but also with the blue-green algae and some things like that. And they are having a water shortage, like we've talked about before today, and they're looking at basically potable reuse of reclaimed water for that part of the state. And part of the bill also essentially required or the elimination of surface water discharges by 2026. That's right around the corner and is a very expensive proposition. And for our area of the state where we basically have a plentiful water supply and our discharge, our one surface water discharge is very clean. It's not in our interest or our ratepayers' interest to even think about that. We are, as an organization, a member of the Florida Water Environment Association, and Don Palmer is on the utility council of that organization. And our dues to that utility council pay for a lobbyist, basically, to represent the industry, the utility industry interest in Florida relating to those things. So that's brought that stuff to our attention. Yes, it had not really made it to our local delegation at this point in time, but certainly they monitor the committees that these bills are in and try to convey the interest of the utilities around the state relating to these bills. But it potentially, if it went unchanged, and nobody thinks it's not going to be changed, would be devastating. Basically, it would be basically time-wise impossible to meet the requirements of the bill, and so expensive as to just not make any sense. So so anyway, through Don's activity with the FWA Utility Council, we've been monitoring that and passing some of that information along. If I think the board members got an update on that last week. So We'll keep an eye, as long as the legislature's in session, we all have to watch out, so.
Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, you know, a lot of what we're saying makes sense there, but the truth is that eventually Florida is probably going to eliminate surface water discharges, whether we like it or not, you know? And so I think that it's worth us looking at. I mean, it's not gonna happen anytime soon, but I think the way you avoid big critical cash flow problems is to be proactive. And that one surface water discharge at Pensacola Beach is, probably cleaner than any stream that flows into the sound. I guess it meets primary drinking water standards. So it's the cleanest water that goes into the sound, but there's still that public perception that it's effluent, you know, even though it's the cleanest water that goes into the sound. I have talked with some people who said that because South Santa Rosa is growing so fast that they have a shortage of irrigation water, of treated effluent to use, and that they desperately need effluent. Well, we're getting money for a big giant reuse project on Pensacola Beach. We're getting grants and funds for that, but the island is only so big, it's so narrow that there's no way that we'll ever to be able to dispose of 100% of that effluent. I'd like to see us at least contact the city of Gulf Breeze, someone from our staff, and say, hey, you know, long term or maybe even short term, what about this high quality effluent, you know, coming to you guys for use? You know, if we can get funding either through a grant or if the legislature's real active on that, you know, through the legislature, would that be something you guys would be willing to discuss and just see? You know, it may go nowhere, but I think it's worth, now that they're desperately needing the effluent, I think it's worth talking about. That beach needs that sewer treatment plant. I don't see there's any way ever to take, some people would like the treatment plant to come off the beach. I just don't think that's possible. I think the risk of moving raw sewage under that bay and maybe having a break or a collapse or hurricane damage at some time is just too high. But high quality effluent that's already going into the bay, I don't see any reason it couldn't be piped under the bay. You know, so I'd like to see us reach out and explore that, knowing that it's long term, that it may or may not happen, but just at least be thinking about it and let them know that we're thinking about it and we're willing to help and able to help, and there might be a joint project somewhere down the road.
Ms. Schumer?
What was that House bill number again?
1656?
The Senate bill is 1656. I think the House bill is 2020.
No, I don't think so. We'll make sure you get that. I know 1656 is right, but I don't think the other one. I'm sorry, I was over there talking about another bill, and I think
Okay.
that was the 1656 is right. Mr. Kimball?
So, you mentioned a lobbyist, and you mentioned that we had it through some other group, but I think, you know, so I serve on the board for a different organization, and we just went through the process of getting a different lobbyist firm because we weren't getting much results from the one we were using. And one of the biggest things that we've seen from this new particular group that we're using is that they are doing a much better job of mobilizing the members, because, you know, I called you because I was going over to Tallahassee a few weeks ago, and I think whether it's just our committee or, you know, we have a lot of voices that we can call and say things. So if we have a lobbyist firm that we're paying for, I don't know that they're doing us justice by keeping us, if you didn't know about this until you were over there, and I don't know, I'm just.
No, I knew about it because Don's lobby group that works for.
Just meaning that, you know, we have a lot more voices if we can individually reach out. So I think maybe they could do a better job or whatever of keeping us in the loop on those things.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Oh, your light's on.
Oh, I
passed.
just
Okay.
was, would,
Three of the things that when Dale brought this up, the irrigation program was one of the less outs. So that was nice to know that we could continue that irrigation on Pensacola Beach, and that would not be, that was one of the things that was exempted out. Wetlands mitigation was, you know, exempted out too, which would take care of biomarkers. But one of the reasons I really liked Bruce Woody is because even though there's only 76,000 people in the city he's in, their sewer treatment plant is twice the size capacity, right, of ours. And they do a lot of, I mean, their reuse water is, they do a lot more reuse water than we do, right? His is mostly industrial, I think, from my conversations with him. So with that Bluffs program going up there that we all know is a pie in the sky, that may be a good way. There's a lot of people that want reused water, so that might be a way to get some industry in here. So I'm anxious to keep watching that one, you know. I know they need 70 million for a road, but if they get the road put in and then industry wants to come that can use our water, then we'll be all right. But otherwise, this is scary to watch, and I agree with Dale. We don't want to get caught in the end when the law passes and we're not ready. So it's something to keep our eyes on. Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Johnson, I had something. You know, Mr. Kimball raised a point that is interesting to me too, is that I know we hired this lobbying firm and we're trying to get money for the Brownsville Cervantes redevelopment and a sewer expansion project. And I'm real hopeful and real concerned that, you know, we get that, but I don't get any kind of communication from the lobbyists. I don't know kind of where we're at or anything like that. I wonder if there's any way to have them give us an update, you know, or something. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen till the legislative session ends, and you know the cards fall where they may. But I do feel like I've been kind of out of the loop on everything over there. I mean, there are ways we might be able to help, make calls or something. You know, maybe we couldn't. Maybe we'd just get in the way. But it'd be nice just to know what's going on with it.
Dr. Walker.
Just wanted to mention the reason Mr. Woody is familiar with a sewage treatment plant that's twice as big as our system, is because they have a combined sewer system. So they have to treat both the sanitary
Gotcha.
sewer, sanitary wastewater, and the stormwater. that
But on
comes out.
reuse, I think they do, they have a lot of industrial use up there, he was telling me, so. More than us, so. That might be something down the road that would help, but I know the Chris plant is going away for all intentional purposes, so, and how much of our,
As much as they want.
yeah, but
Well, they're,
just things to think about, so.
I'll just say, certainly the staff is aware of the issues on Pensacola Beach with the surface water discharge there, and we have been discussing, you know, the potential beyond just expansion of the reclaim system on the beach to looking at possibly reclaim water back to Gulf Breeze or something like that. We're also trying to think long range about the Central Water Reclamation Facility and water options there with the Chris plant, with IP, with all the issues that go along with that. And I think Don and his group do a very good job of staying ahead of the curve on that. But this bill that was written with a deadline of 2026 is just plain, you know, not realistic. So it kind of changed everybody's, you know, tension level a little bit there just to see it on paper.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Do we have anything further on new business or communications of any kind? Now we move to the last open forum. I don't see any pink slips, so we are adjourned. Wait, I'm sorry, Ms. Shomi.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Next month, our meeting's March 17th, which is the presidential primary. Is there any way to reschedule our March meeting by chance?
I don't know if there's any way to reschedule our meeting at this point, but quite often on this committee, if we don't have enough issues, we can cancel. So I will keep an eye on that, and if we have very few issues that I can't put off until, if I can put them off till the next month, I will cancel the meeting.
Okay, because I thought about this earlier today in our PDC meeting. Commissioner Berry, made us aware that our meeting is on the primary, so we're moving that. And also, in August, it's going to happen again. It's going to actually be the primary.
On August 18th,
Yes.
I will not be here. Again, is it the CAC meeting both days? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention as chair. I will keep an eye on that, and if at all possible, we can cancel if we can't move things. So, if we can move things to the next month. Thank you, and we are adjourned. Oh, Dr. Walker?
Yes, I want to say that my idea about committee meetings is that if we don't have much business, then let's use that meeting as an occasion for staff to give us a good report on some important aspect of our operations. So in my opinion, we basically should almost never have a canceled meeting, because we can put the time to good use some way.
Thank you. Nothing further? We are adjourned.